Let's all close our eyes for a minute and imagine. There's 3 seconds left in the fourth quarter of the championship game. Your team is down 2 points. You need to hit a 3-point shot to win the game. This shot not only wins you the championship, but also wins your city a championship, which they haven't had a championship in over 30 years. Fans who have been following a team for 60 plus years finally get to see their team win a championship and their city prosper. I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, have a sport that we love to watch that gets us excited. Whether it's following your favorite basketball or football team that represents your city, or following the Olympics and supporting your country. These sporting events allow us to not only to feel the ups and downs of our teams, but they also let us escape our own road bumps in life, even if it is for a couple of hours. Examples: 9/11 and the Boston Marathon bombing. Not only do these sports help us, the fan, escape, they also can help our youth stay out of trouble and allow them to have something that they can keep them on the straight and narrow. Now, you may be asking, what credibility do I have as a sports person? I'm not on ESPN or anything like that, but I do, and I am a very crazy sports fan. I love to watch most sporting events, with my favorites being football and basketball. I'm a Philadelphia sports fan, and some say we're the most passionate and also the most hated sports fans. I also watch and listen to many sports channels like ESPN. Sports are more than entertainment for fans or jobs for athletes. Yes, that is their main purpose, but they can mean so much more to a person or a group of people or even a city. Let's begin with how sports and the events of 9/11 came together. As we all remember, 9/11 was a horrific event in American history. It was one that left tons of casualties and left the American people wondering why. It's one of those events that you will always remember where you were. In this horrific event, there was something that brought the country together: sports. As we all coped with 9/11 in our own ways, the one thing the most Americans didn't miss out on was sports. It was the sports that let us all come together, rivals, sporting states becoming friends, different races joined hands, because in that one moment, we all knew there was something much bigger than all of us, and that was our country and those who serve. The NFL had intentions of canceling their games the weekend after 9/11, but the athletes came together, friends and foes, and wanted to play. They wanted to play the games not to get their paychecks or to wear a flashy pair of shoes or cleats, but to play so we as Americans could, for just a couple of hours, break free from the travesty that happened. These athletes put aside their egos so the American people could put aside their grieving. It was here in this moment, that the athletes on the field and the fans in the stands were not just considered players and fans, but they were considered equals. Before every sporting event, someone sings the national anthem, and at some football games, they have a flyover of 3 or 4 jets. The Sunday after 9/11, the national anthem meant that much more to everyone, and the flyover was that much more impactful. I know for myself, watching the games on TV, I got the chills during the national anthem and the flyover. I can only imagine how everyone in the stadium felt. In that moment, the national anthem wasn't just a song about America. It was a bond between black and white, rich and poor, man and woman, and friend and foe. Another event that was horrific was the Boston Marathon bombing. The Boston Marathon didn't have the same amount of casualties that 9/11 did, but it still had an unforgettable impact on those involved and those watching. The Boston Marathon bombing was one of great surprise. Like 9/11, it was a big hit to the American psyche. The difference between the two was that 9/11 impacted America as a whole, where the Boston Marathon bombing impacted a city. Now, I'm not saying that we as Americans were not affected by what happened at the Boston Marathon, but it was more of an attack on a city than America as a whole. Again, the Boston Marathon left us all in shock and grieving in some kind of way. That didn't stop the sporting events from taking place. Just like 9/11, sports took a stand again and played their games, again giving those a getaway from the travesty. The national anthem once again stood at the forefront and made the significant bond between one and all. For in that moment, we weren't considered brothers or sisters, mothers or fathers. We were Americans. The Boston Marathon impacted us all in some way, but the city of Boston took it very personally. I know David Ortiz, a designated hitter for the Boston Red Sox, gave a speech, and from this speech came the term Boston Strong. Whether it's sports, music, cooking, or reading, we all have that one thing that we love to do that lets us escape from our troubles and roadblocks in life. At the same time, there are events that can bring people together in some kind of way. Hopefully, some of us are luckier than others to have a winning sports team in our cities, but for those who don't, you'll get it. It just takes time. Just remember that sports do more than give us championships and heartbreaks. Sports can bring us all together in rough times. It can help our minds escape from those rough times. As we saw happen for 9/11 and the Boston Marathon bombing, these events will never be forgotten and will always be remembered for when we as Americans put our differences aside for the greater good and were American strong.